Okay, so we're going to get started because we're recording and people are going to just pipe in and pipe out, and that'll be fine. My name is Caroline Long, and I'm the director of St. Gerard House. And we are really honored and thrilled to be giving you this presentation tonight on fire prevention, focusing on autism spectrum disorder and the safety with kids with special needs. And in collaboration with the City of Hendersonville's fire department, we are offering this presentation, and I would like to introduce the speakers that are going to be presenting. Fire Marshal Mike Ostrander, right there, yay. And sitting next to him is Assistant Fire Marshal John Coffey. And thank you. And then above them on the screen, if it's on your screen too, is Vicki Rogers, and she's a BCABA at the St. Gerard House. And so we are thrilled to have them give this presentation. And feel free to type in any questions that you have in the chat. Berta Medina, Assistant Director of St. Gerard House, will be monitoring the chat and bringing your questions to the panel. And feel free to type in there as you want, or raise your hand if you'd like to for us to call on you or stop or ask a question, because it's probably a timely question and everybody needs to probably hear it too. So without further ado, I would like to turn it over to these guys and let them get started. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for the offer of inviting us. Thanks to everybody for attending. Fire prevention is very important to us. We get excited about it. One of the things that we enjoy is getting to go and talk to the kids and talk to the parents and just get that message out. I feel like Assistant Fire Marshal Coffey is as excited as I am. And with this specific focus on the spectrum, we've actually been able to develop ourselves on it as well. We've learned a lot. We've gotten excited. We think we're at the start of a road. So what we're going to do, our plan is to go down. We're going to talk as we normally would about our general fire prevention topics. These are going to include exit plans in your home, meeting places, CO and smoke detectors, general fire safety, kitchen safety, and we get to what we get to. I'm happy to come back as many times as it takes to cover the topics, but I want you guys to be engaged. And if I present something, we've tried to address the points that we can think of, but each of you has an independent individual that's your loved one. I'm going to give you a broad piece of information, and the key with it is that I'm not telling anybody how to do anything perfect. We're giving you a starting point, and then we will together figure out a way to make that work. It may not be that particular idea, but we'll jump in it together and we'll figure out something to accomplish that goal. Certainly the main point is that the time to figure out, how people are going to react, what kind of tools you have, what your plan is now. It's not when that, you're trying to get away from a fire at 2 o'clock in the morning. So feel free to jump in and engage if you have questions. If I don't know the answer, I'll tell you I don't know, but we will find out and we'll certainly get back to you. Our information, our phone number and email is included in the slides, and we'll make sure everybody has that. We work for the community. So you call me anytime, you email me anytime, and we'll figure out a plan together. So with that aside, we'll jump into it. So the main purpose obviously is to identify the households in our community that care for a loved one on the ASD spectrum. But a lot of the information that we're going to provide isn't specific to that. It's basically anybody who is going to need that little something special. It may be an elderly person in the home. a young child in the home, whatever the circumstance is, this is going to provide some details to kind of to support that. Again, we're offering baseline information. So some of our objectives, we're gonna, I think we talked about these just a minute ago. The different devices, exit drills in the home, or EDITH, you'll hear us refer to that. The treasure box plan, that's an idea that we actually came up with in developing this program. We think it might actually work well, and we're actually going to use it in some of our other programs. General fire safety and home safety measures, including kitchens. So EDITH is an acronym because the fire department loves acronyms. It's how we remember stuff. But that is exit drills in the home. The key with this is everybody should have a map of your house that tells if something happens, whether it's a fire, it may be a natural disaster event, it could be a smoke event, whatever that is, knowing how you're going to get out. And that's any room in your house, and you should have at least 2 ways out. So a lot of people don't realize, because we base our knowledge of fire, if we haven't experienced it personally, off of what we've seen on TV. That's our biggest resource that we have. And real fire is not Hollywood fire. The smoke will develop quickly, especially with furnishings and stuff of today. It's all petroleum based. It's rapid heat that it's putting off. Temperatures are elevating quickly. The smoke is dense and black very early. So the perception that people have that, well, if this happens, I'm going to walk over here and do this, and I'm going to go do that, more often than not is not the case. When you burn bacon and your house smokes up a little bit and sets all those annoying smoke detectors off, that's ideal. If your house is on fire, by the time that's setting off a detector, typically you may only have a few minutes or seconds even to implement a plan. So we want to get all that engaged ahead of time and give you those tools. So having an escape plan, knowing 2 ways out of every room. Once you get out, we want to stay out. I'm a big advocate of, and we'll get into this a little bit, but when you're doing your exit drills, I think most people are aware when our kids go to school, every month they're having to do exit or fire drills. Man, Mom, we had to do another fire drill today. That thing was so loud. And the biggest thing with it is they're not teaching the kids to go do a certain thing because the fire alarm's going off. It's muscle memory. You could literally take the teacher out of the aspect in these, and they've done it so many times. The noise has registered certain muscle memories that they get up, they get in their line, and they walk down the hall, and they go and stand where they're supposed to in the parking lot or wherever their meeting place is. And that's the same kind of process that we need to be doing at home. We typically suggest doing them at least twice a year. Obviously, that's going to vary based on the level of repetition that you need to do with your loved one. Some people on the spectrum, they've got to have that routine. So if you need to do that every day for it to become part of that muscle memory, then do it every day. It takes 5 minutes, and if they pick up on it, then you're going to start to see that they're going to become comfortable with it, and they're going to be much better in a real life situation, which hopefully never happens. When you get outside, obviously you want to have a meeting place. We'll talk about that also. A lot of the decisions for locations of that have kind of changed in the last decade or so. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, so we'll get into those. So you can see as on this example, we're not looking for anything in depth. It doesn't have to be a blueprint, footprint of your house. A lot of times getting the loved ones, your kids, the adults, everybody involved in the creation of this, as much as they can, they're going to buy into it. They're going to kind of understand where you drew the arrows and why. This particular one, you can see they use solid lines for a primary exit, a dotted one for an alternate. I'm a big fan of different colors. So especially if your loved one correlates certain things with certain colors, use that. Anything that is normal and routine that's going to make this easier to adapt, use that. Take this and tweak it. I tell people don't use red arrows because to me, red means stop. So I tell them to use green for their primary and blue for their secondary. You know, put a red triangle wherever your fire extinguisher is. It's the same thing I tell my business owners when we're out doing inspections. So you can see even in the bathroom on this example, they have 2 ways out. So the important thing is not just having 2 ways out, because it's easy to say, well, yep, I have that window in my bathroom. Well, I don't know if anybody's ever tried to crawl through the window in their bathroom, but it's not always feasible. But if that's your second way out, then at some point as you're practicing this, you need to make sure you're using all of those different routes. You know, and maybe you do it 2 or 3 times in a row, but you know, if your plan is for your child to climb out a window onto a porch roof, that's fine. Make sure they have something beyond that. I ran into that not long ago, and they said, yep, they go out this window, and I looked and it was a porch roof, and I said, well, where's the ladder? How do they get down? And they said, we never thought of that. We just got them out the house we figured you guys would be here by then. And more than likely, that's going to be the case, but we want to plan for the worst case scenario. So when you're doing those, make sure you're getting out, using both means and having that meeting place. A lot of people, they used to want to meet at the mailbox out front. A lot of people like to meet by the fire hydrant because they assume the fire department will see them. We actually don't advocate that. Staying away from the entrance of your driveway is what I recommend. If you can meet at a neighbor's porch or in a corner of a yard, somewhere where you're not going to be prone to being in the way of incoming, you know, you're going to have lots of people coming in big trucks. And when we're pulling up the scene, we're ideally trying to size up that scene. We want to see, what do we have? What's on fire? What are our smoke conditions? There's a lot that we're trying to take in. And certainly we're paying attention where we're driving, but we want to reduce that chance that somebody's going to dart out in front of the truck. So if we can relocate that meeting place over to another portion of the driveway, part of our process is doing a walk around of the building. So we should see you when we're doing that. But so
we have a question in the chat.
Okay.
Mike, how far away from the house does the meeting place need to be for safety?
So that's going to vary on a couple different things. Number one is going to be the comfort level of the people that are involved. As far away as you can get, that's still in the area is obviously going to be better. Sometimes as we get people that are accustomed to being in their homes, they might get scared or excited. So we might need to keep from taking them quite as far, but depending on, you know, what that building is made of, how big it is all going to debate on the heat output that's coming out. This particular size residence on this example, if that was fully involved or developing heavy fire, the meeting place on this picture is entirely too close. You would need to be probably like way on the other side of that yellow block. And I get it's on here just to get it all in there, but that's just kind of a perception. You're probably 75 feet to 100 feet, and you're probably still going to feel heat if it's a heavy fire. You know, if it's something little, you know, you certainly don't have to run halfway down the block. But you know, these buildings, when everything is burning, there is a huge heat output that's coming out. Everything in there has its own little bit of energy. And as that burns and gets warmed up, everything gets excited and spreads out. everything in there is potential heat, potential energy, and it's coming out as light and heat. So that heat's got to go somewhere, and it's going to go out and up.
Your meeting place just needs to be the initial rally point of the group. Nothing says that once everyone is accounted for, that you have to stay in that spot. You can move the group as needed, but in your initial plan, you need to have the first rally point where everyone knows that's where I'm going once we get out of the house. And then once we're together and there's a proper head count and everyone that's supposed to be there is there, then when help gets there and we know as firemen, once we get there, that's gonna be our primary concern, is the people in the house. For us to do our job quickly and effectively, we have to make sure that we don't need to do a rescue and everyone is accounted for. Once we can confirm that you're safe, then we'll continue our operations on extinguishing the fire. But our primary concern is find you, make sure everyone that's there is supposed to be there, and that there's no injuries. And then we'll move on. And at that point, once we know you're safe, you can move to an alternate site.
That's a great point. Thank you.
So while we're kind of on that, I'm not sure if it comes up again in the slide, so I just want to touch on it. But it is super, super important that part of our drills, when we get out to our meeting point, that we're emphasizing that once you get out, you stay out. And generally there's a couple reasons that people tend to go back inside. With adults, it's usually because they can't find a loved one, so they're going to go find them. And I would be hard pressed to tell anybody, that I'm going to tell you not to do that. Just because they're not at the meeting place doesn't mean they didn't get out. And it's more important for you to be able to tell us this is where they normally are, so we can make a timely rescue. I would rather go in this house and know that I'm going down the hallway to the left because that's where Jimmy's room is, than to get there and now nobody's there and we find one person in the hallway. So now we have to deal with that before we even get them back out, go back in and look for the other person. So, our job is rescue and extinguishment. One thing that we actually learned when we were putting this together is the probability for children or people on the spectrum, that because there's so much excited, there's a lot going on outside. There's lights, there's sirens, there's people talking, there's fire, and their safe place many times is in their home, or they have that spot. So making sure when you do get them out, having something that is going to divert their attention or calm them, making sure you've got someone who is keeping eyes or tabs on them so they don't go back in. That was when we first started doing this. We were made aware of the advocate for the autism bills. That was kind of a big story where she knew a lot about how her child was going to respond, and they had, unfortunately they had a fire. She got out and he didn't. Well, he got out, he went back in, and she went after him, and unfortunately neither one of them came back out. So we want to try to do everything we can to avoid that. And the location of your meeting place can actually play into that, because if you can develop that into another safe space, somewhere that they feel like they're okay. Maybe your meeting place is a little playhouse out in the yard where you can actually get inside it and be sheltered. It doesn't have to be just a stick or a tree or something like that. Make that environment something where it's going to help you in the heat of the moment.
One thing about EDITH is it was developed in 1996. So it's been around for a while. And the point of EDITH was to really help guide the lead family members or the leads of the household to develop the individual plan for fire safety. Obviously, before 1996, the numbers you see on the screen now were much higher, but just to put it in perspective of almost 20 plus years later, or 30 years later, probably by this point, is in 2019, NFPA estimated 1.3 million fires. We had 3,700 civilian casualties and 16,600 injuries. So right now, or as of 2019, we respond on a fire every 24 seconds somewhere in the country. Now, how you can survive. You can survive a major fire in your home if you're alerted early, and can get out of your home quickly and then stay out. And that's what Mike was trying to stress earlier, is it's a hard thing to think about, but once you're out, you need to stay out. You know, we're trained to do what we need to do in the event that we may have to perform rescue, but it makes it more difficult if we're doing more than one rescue. So when a fire happens, there's no time for planning. And we talked about this earlier. Everyone needs to sit down with their family now, make a step-by-step plan for escaping, and develop that safe place. And we know, just for me, helping develop this program for everybody, it was brought to my attention that your plan, it's hard for us to really tell you what you need to do in your own home, because everyone on the spectrum is so different. Just like one person had said that, they have 2 children with autism, but they're on opposite ends of that spectrum when it comes to the excitement and the anxiety. So, but we're here to help guide you with the resources that you can need to individualize your home safety plan. Be prepared. Be sure everyone in the house knows how to unlock the doors, unlock the windows. There's multiple different types of door styles. So everyone needs to be familiar, especially in the dark. One thing I do with my own children is we put on blindfolds. I spin them around in their room and then have them try and get to the front door and get out of the house. If you live in a 2-story house and you have to escape from a secondary window, be sure that there's a safe way to reach the ground. They do make aftermarket safety ladders that you can put on your window and climb out if necessary. So fire drills need to begin from the smoke detector and finish at the meeting point. So when you're practicing at your home, and I can't stress how much you need to practice. And like we said earlier, develop that muscle memory. When you practice your alarm, it's just like in school, when they do their fire drills, it starts with the alarm and it ends when everyone's out of the building. So
John, do you guys have any tips for families who have young kids, like 4, 3-year-olds?
So in that case, obviously they're incapable of self-rescue at that age to a certain point. It's really the caregiver is gonna have to take up that role and develop that plan on, okay, my 1 to 3-year-old is normally in this part of the house. If something happens, here's my plan. So, I mean, that's one of those things that's going to have to be individualized for every home.
So we're getting into kind of the meat and potatoes of the general, what we would normally present to people. So I'm sure as we're going through this, the minute we said everybody should be able to unlock their doors, people are like, nope. Yep. all I can do to keep people in here, let alone teach them how to get out.
Exactly. We have a lot of, don't take this the wrong way, but a lot of kids that need to be locked into their rooms for different elopement reasons, and or families that sleep in a chair outside of their kid's room because they leave the house in the middle of the night and stuff like that. So there's a lot of that stuff going on a day-to-day basis.
And I completely expected it. When there's a few things in here I knew when I hit it, people were going to be like, this isn't for us. This is exactly kind of what we're trying to get across, that if you do have those kids that need to be locked, for whatever reason, then you need to make sure that's part of your plan. That's part of your individuality, and know that in the event of a fire, that's something you're going to have to deal with. So, that they're not going to be able to get out that way. So, what steps can you take? Do you put them in a room right next to you where you can get out there and that's part of your escape plan? So I'm walking out my door, I can unlock this door and we can get them really quick, and maybe we go out the window in their room. And if that's part of your plan and it works, that's amazing. But you need to find those little things that are different because we mention it and you say it's not going to work, then everything is possible. There's always a way to make something better. I can't tell you that we're going to prevent everything, but we can certainly do more to help more people. If your child absolutely has to be stuck in this room, then maybe you have to go to the extent of adding more sheets of firewall or drywall to it. Drywall actually has a fire rating. So now you're actually building up those layers of protection, switching from a potentially hollow core door, which is going to burn a lot easier, to a solid door. So now you're building those things that's going to allow more time for us. Somebody can tell us they're in there, here it is. And we can't tell you whether or not that's going to help, but it's certainly not going to hurt. Worst case scenario, they lose 2 inches off their room. You do it when they're not home, they might not ever know. But, if there's extremes that are speed bumps in your planning process, then, think of what can I do to make this happen? Make sure that there are flashlights and stuff in there, that those kids, if they're getting locked in a room, it should be a room with a window. That way they can at least, teach them when the smoke alarm's going off, you go over to your window, you put a towel at the bottom of the door and you go to your window and you shine your flashlight. Because then when we're walking around the building, we're going to see that flashlight and immediately we're shifting into overdrive because we know there's somebody up there. We're not in a search. We're now in a rescue because I've got a guaranteed, it's not the cat up there waving the flashlight. And even if it is, we save cats too. But, the point is giving them all those tools and those resources. So as we come along and you find those little hiccups, say, hey, this is what I've got. Email me later and let's work on something together. Let's figure something out.
We have a question in the chat that says, is there a type of fire extinguisher that is best for the home with children?
So your fire extinguishers are all rated 2 different ways. So the first is by the type of fire that they're capable of extinguishing, which is they're set into classes. So class A is like organic materials. If you burn it and it left an ash, that's generally a class A. A class B is going to be your flammable liquids, so gasoline, stuff like that. C is electrical, and the important thing with that is just remember, if you turn the power off, it's not electrical anymore. Now it's a class A or B. And then you get into kind of some other classes like flammable metals, which most people don't deal with in their home, and class K, which is for commercial grease fires. So my suggestion is most of the extinguishers you find are going to be an ABC extinguisher. They're actually going to have, it's actually going to, on the labeling, it's going to tell you what it's for. We're grabbing one right over here. It's perks of being at the firehouse. All right. So on the front, you can see this one says ABC. So it also has pictures on the front, and it will tell you on the box when you look at it, this is what this is for. So whatever you're buying this to protect or to use on, that's what you go by. So, you know, if you're keeping one for your kitchen and your fireplace, an ABC is going to work. That's going to cover most of your stuff. So the other thing that this is measured by, and I don't think you can see it on this one, but it is the size. So typically for commercial business, the ones that most people see inside their business, those are a 2A 10BC. So they're capable of putting out a 20 by 20 Class A fire or a 10 square foot pan B and C. So a lot of the ones that you get for your home, your car, RV, boat, stuff like that, there are lots of the skinny ones. Those are generally a 1A 10BC. So it's much less of the content. So if you have a bigger home, you might need more than one, or you could go with a bigger extinguisher. We do recommend putting one on each level. And I tell people, don't stick it next to your front door. People want to mount them, and one of three places is generally where I see it, is close to the front door. And the problem with that is if you get to the front door, we want you going out the front door. We don't want you running to the exit to get an extinguisher to run back inside to try to use it. Go out, you know, we'll go in and deal with the fire. Or they put it under their kitchen sink, which is okay as long as you mount it on the side of the cabinet under your kitchen sink. Otherwise, what's going to inevitably happen is you're going to put it at the front, and then you're going to move something and move something and move something. So by the time you need it, it's all the way in the back behind all the cleaning supplies and the plumbing stuff and everything you're trying to throw out of the way when your kitchen's on fire. If it's mounted, it's not moving. A lot of people don't like putting them under there because they feel like the kids might get to them. I personally am an advocate of teaching kids how to be responsible with a fire extinguisher. It's not my place to tell somebody that they can't use that just because they're younger. It's my place to tell them, if you have to use this, this is what you use it for, this is when you use it, and this is how you use it. Give them that opportunity to get out. I also tell people to get an extinguisher based on not to put a fire out, but that is your key to getting out. So if you are on a second level in a bedroom, then you've got to go down the stairs and all the way out the front door. There might be a lot of fire conditions you deal with in there, and you can potentially put out a fire with an extinguisher, but one like you see in a business, anything over about 6 foot is beyond what you're going to accomplish with that extinguisher for the average person. A fire will double in size roughly, depending on the fuel, about every 30 seconds. So every 30 seconds it's getting bigger and then doubles and then doubles. So it doesn't take it long to get 6 feet. So by the time you're getting your extinguisher and running down from upstairs, it's probably past that point. But using that where you can at least control the fire, you can knock it down, not put it out, but you spray a little, you've calmed it down and reset it. And now you're letting your family get past that point. You get through there, you get to the next point, you know, that's your sword in the fight to get out. So I tell people to think of it as a key to escape, not just a means to extinguish. But
Mike, you unknowingly answered a question in the chat that was exactly that. At what point do I abandon trying to put out the fire with the extinguisher? So we got it. The answer is you covered it perfectly.
And one more thing with that is anytime you are uncomfortable with it, abandon it. If you don't think you can do that, go for the exit. If you think it's too big. So I'm gonna let John jump back in. Sorry, I get on tangents. I told you it was going to take forever.
So for Edith, as far as part of the program, some of the main points to take home is to crawl low under the smoke. Most of the parents have heard that for years. Smoke contains deadly gases and heat rises. So all of that, all the smoke and all the poisonous gases are going to follow the heat up towards the ceiling. But as Mike pointed out, every 30 seconds, the fire is getting bigger. So you only have a very short window to be able to get out of your home before you have minimal space to crawl out. And if you have to, you'll get on your belly if you have to crawl out, if that's what it's going to take for you to be able to breathe clean enough air. Because what can happen is that the gases, not just the heat to push you down, because it is an intense heat. Even for us in our fire gear, at certain points of a fully involved fire, we can feel that heat through our fire gear.
1,400 degrees.
Yes, and some of the gases will incapacitate you, and you'll pass out if you're breathing in those gases and that smoke. So it's very important.
And sorry, just to interrupt, I love the idea of having a sled if your child is immobile or needs any sort of major sort of like mechanics to get outside, or a blanket to like cover or to put under them to just use as a sled or anything like that. There is a ton of ways out there if your kid has any sort of mobility like deficits or anything like there's a ton of ways to get them out of there, like a sled, a blanket, like a piece of cookie sheet, anything, like something that can slide them out of there, that can get them out of there, that they don't have to work so hard. There's a ton of other ways to practice getting your child who might not be as mobile out of your house, even if they're on the second floor, the third floor. Like there are ways to program ahead and plan ahead to get them out of there, just not based on mobility alone. So
yeah, so that is actually one of the techniques that we teach our firemen in the academy, and it's called a blanket drag. So when you have a victim who's succumbing, you're just not able to physically pick them up, you roll them onto a blanket, get their body on as much as the blanket as possible, and you just drag them out of the house. So very, very good. Thank you for adding that. So really simple. As you can see on the slide, close, stuff, go, and call. And what I mean by that is if you're trapped, and this might play into those that maybe you can't get to their room and the fires cut you off, if you can practice with them, that if they feel that they become trapped, or if you become trapped, all right, you need to close all the doors between you and the fire. This is a self-rescue and a survival mode. So close all the doors, all right? And then the cracks around the doors, you need to stuff those cracks if possible with anything you can find in the room, clothing or anything to keep that smoke from coming into the room. All right, so smoke and heat, it travels along with air. So if there's airflow, that's where it's going to get introduced. I didn't put it in this slide, but think about your air vents in your home. Shut those vents or stuff those vents. You want to make that place airtight. Then go to a window, shout for help, signal for help, use a light colored cloth, a pillowcase, anything, flashlights. One thing that I did discover doing the research on nonverbal people on the spectrum is the use of a whistle, of just one of those little emergency whistles that boaters use that you can find at Walmart for just a couple cents, or even a referee whistle. But a whistle, just teach them if they're in trouble, they just blow that whistle and keep blowing and blowing until someone can come and get them, because we'll hear the whistle. Whistles are loud. It's a certain decibel that can hit. We can hear it.
We can teach blowing a whistle all day long.
Yes, exactly.
That is something we can do to help to blow a whistle. Absolutely.
You say that now.
Yeah. And then even some of the higher functioning people on the spectrum that can operate a cellular telephone, we encourage them to call the fire department. We have plenty of dispatchers that will stay on the line with them until help gets there. And think about this for yourselves as well. So, but, you know, enclose yourself, stuff the airflow, stop it from coming in, go to a window, call for help if you can't get out of the window or out of the house safely. And
so remember on that last information this is for a situation where somebody is in a room that or a space they can't get out of. We covered earlier about the kids who might need to be locked. This is big information for them, because knowing that they need to cover those gaps, you know, that they call. But this is stuff that you're only going to want to do if you're trapped, short of the doors. My house, I close every door when I come in and out of it. It drives my wife crazy, but every little thing that I can do to limit that airflow. There's tons and tons of examples online, videos. I've seen it in person where you have a house that is decimated. You know, everything is just black, burnt, and just charred, and you find this door that's closed and it's just burnt beyond all recognition other than a doorknob, and you open it and the other side is just pristine. The survivability on the in that space is so dramatic. You know, I'm a huge advocate of sleeping with doors closed. I realize that you may have children that that's not ideal, but the gases and smoke inhalation are what kill more people in a fire. It's not actually getting burned. Getting burned, certainly, you know, there are casualties for that, but most people are overtaken by the poisonous gases, hydrogen cyanide, all that stuff that's actually in smoke because of what we build furnishings out of now. So we can shut that. We're sealing that gap. But I started this because where it says call, so the only time that we're calling because the house is on fire from inside the house is when we're stuck in the house. We're not going to do that before we self-rescue if we're able to do so. We want to do that from outside or from a neighbor's phone.
Okay, so through most of our programs, we reiterate a lot of facts. So you may hear some repetition in our presentations. But again, in case of a fire, don't stop for anything, right? Get out, stay out, all right? After you get out, go to your meeting place. Call the fire department. You can go to a neighbor. Nowadays, everyone has their cell phones. And then make sure that every member is accounted for. All right, and and also teach your children how to call 911. Unfortunately, now that there's not a common telephone in homes anymore, they need to be able to find out how they can call 911. Now, one little tidbit that not everyone knows is the standard phone line that is still probably in your house is still usable for 911 purposes. So state of North Carolina, you can get a standard telephone, plug it in the wall, and you can still call 911, even though you don't pay for phone service. So that might be something to think about.
Wow.
Again, the stop, drop, and roll. That's been taught for years. But the other thing is if there's someone else there to help that person smother their clothes out. Now, you can watch videos of people that attempt to say that the stop, drop, and roll doesn't work. And we understand the excitability, but the thing is they have to stay focused. And the point of rolling is to smother the flames. You know, there's times where it's an unexpected moment, but that's where practicing comes into play.
So I had a foster care family I was talking to once, and they kind of we were going back and forth, and they had a child with a traumatic background, and the thought of them, the smothering, they said was going to freak them out. Well, so if there is an issue with that series of actions, so we actually came up with them was not just stop, drop, and roll, but it was stop, drop, cover your face, rock and roll. And this child actually, they love music and they got excited about the rocking and rolling. And the thought process was, if, you know, generally when someone is doing that, their entire body is not on fire. If it is, then yes, you need to roll over and over and over. But if my arm is on fire, I don't need to roll onto this arm if this arm's not on fire. I need to keep this one smothered as much as possible, or my back or my front. So if, you know, the back of my shirt's on fire, I can literally get down on the ground and cover my face and just lay on my back and just go back and forth like this. They don't necessarily have to roll all the way across the yard, because what you're doing is you're smothering it and then you're giving it oxygen, smothering it and giving it oxygen. And the point of this is we want to break that chemical reaction that is fire and take oxygen out of it, because without oxygen, fire doesn't happen. It has to have oxygen to develop. It's the most effective way that we have to put it out. So if you see somebody who's possibly got clothes or something on fire, you know, keep that in mind. You'll see people that are, you know, smothering them. They're putting blankets on them. Blankets work very effective. Just try not to be the one that's putting a blanket on and trying to pat it out. I don't know if anybody in here has ever burnt their hand, but if somebody smacked it, I would probably lose my mind. So you have to remember the area that they're burnt, you know, is potentially, that's an injury now. So we want to cover that, and patting it's not going to do anything. All we're doing is making little puffs of air inside there. So just smother it, take that air away, and develop those programs. So covering your face is a big one. If you do have to go over on your belly, it keeps your face from being in the dirt or the carpet or whatever. And it gives you that little area of protection. So
I had a question about 911 calls. So how we teach is by repetition, and if you really want to make it real, you need to make it real. I mean, is there any way to set up a call ahead to 911 and say, we're going to practice with this kid from 2 to 3? We're going to try to get them. I mean, are they going to be like, we're not having any part of that?
You're not going to be able to make a bunch of calls to 911. And here's the reason is even if someone calls 911 and says, hey, I accidentally did that, didn't mean to do it, my kid dialed the phone, they still have to send somebody out because they have to make sure that it's not code for something, or that somebody is not in trouble and being forced to say something. It's like us on fire alarms. If a fire alarm goes off, you can't call us and tell us, oh, it's okay, my house isn't really on fire. We're still going to send somebody because we have to be sure. So my suggestion on something like that is maybe find, I don't know how well this would work. I would try this first, but if you have an old telephone and some walkie-talkies, and you can maybe get in another room and maybe tape that walkie-talkie to the phone. Teach them the process of dialing the phone and then what they're going to hear on the other end. Even if they don't say anything, can't say anything, don't push another button. If they dial that number and hang up, somebody is coming. If it's an incomplete 911, the police department's going to get called. And if the police department shows up and the house is on fire, they're certainly going to call and get other things going. You know, using a play phone or something like that. Really, it's about getting them just in the habit of, this is the number that I call. And maybe it's a speed dial number. Maybe it's not 911. Maybe you have that programmed in as 2, you know, and then you can teach them on the phone. You're not necessarily dialing a speed dial number, but now you're just pressing 2. You can call 2 and nobody's going to get upset. Then you program it in as, this is the speed dial number. And so they have that muscle memory. You know, worst case scenario, they call it, somebody comes out, and that's fine. But if you keep doing it over and over and over again, then somebody's going to get mad. But I'm okay with it if it makes somebody safer. But
I love the idea of practicing it with like an old phone, or with us in the clinic, or us amongst the families that we know. All right, you can call speed dial number 2, and right now it will lead it to me. Yeah. But in the future, it would lead it to 911, and I will practice saying all of the things that 911 would say. I will ask you what your address is. I will ask you what the emergency is. I will do all of those things. So even if it's something that we can like role play amongst SGH, and know that when we dial number 2, we will get to this phone number. Hi, Bridget. And we will get to, this is what we're going to have to say. My house is on fire. I'm in trouble, whatever it is. If that's something that we need to set up amongst SGH to just get to one person, and that person can role play it as to not involve the fire department every single time, or whatever it is. Like,
unhook the phone and have them boost 911, and you're doing the verbal cues. So something else, because I feel like this is another one of those things that people might say, that's not going to work. So if you have nonverbal kids, obviously talking on the phone is not something that's realistic. So understanding ahead of time and making part of your plan. So if you can teach them that when they dial 911, if the house is on fire, we push 911 and then whatever button 3 times. If somebody's hurt, we push 911 and then whatever button 5 times. So if you can go through this process and that is their routine and they can do that, then it is super easy to call dispatch on a non-emergency number, and you can do what's called a landmark note. You can say, hey, I live at such and such an address, and I've got a nonverbal person here, and we have developed this for our 911 calls. Anytime a 911 call comes in from that address, that information is going to pop up. So if it says caller may be nonverbal, may just hit the button a bunch of times, they at least have that information. So there's always a way to come up with something. It's really, what are you willing to put the time into to make it a routine, and what is your loved one capable of learning? And I can't tell you guys that. I am happy for you to tell me that, and I will work all day long on helping you come up with plans or ideas. And we come up with an idea, we try it. If it doesn't work, we try something else. That's the great thing about being a human being, is trial and error. But let's do that now while we're practicing and developing that routine. So if something works, let's get the process in. But there are a ton of other tools, and we'll get into some of that if we do another one.
Sorry. So to answer that question, they do make a rescue ladder. I actually saw it sold at some of the big box stores locally here, like Walmart and Lowe's. And what it is it's just like a chain link ladder that's rolled up. And in the event of an emergency, you need to climb down, it goes, and it's really easy. You put it right over the bottom sash of the window, the ledge. You deploy the ladder, it rolls all the way down, and it's probably, don't quote me on, I think it's a 25-foot ladder. And 25 feet, that's fairly long, especially for a second story.
That gets you out of a third floor.
Probably. Yeah, and then you're able to climb down the ladder. Now the scary part is, even for new firemen in the academy, is when we're practicing climbing out windows ourselves. That can be a little unnerving. So if you do buy something like that, again, we suggest you practice safely.
Right.
So yeah.
Don't try it on the second floor.
No.
So go to a playground, something like that has little elevated platforms that you have just enough that you can get that thing deployed, even if it's 1 or 2 steps, and where you're getting used to what that's going to feel like as you step onto it. And gradually just kind of build that up, and then you'll get to the point where they're comfortable using it. You're not going to have to, you do want to practice. If that's one of your ways out, at some point you're going to need to throw that thing out the window and have somebody go down, if that's your way out. Nothing says they have to do that with nothing below them. You can contact whoever your fire department is and let them know, hey, we're doing our fire drills and we've got a second door or second floor window that we need to practice going out. And then let us come and we can help set something up so it's safe. We could do something actually here, and we can actually kind of set up a little rappel system. It's the same stuff we do when we're teaching firemen. We don't let them just fall out the window. We put safety catches on them. Based on the type of ladder you get, that's going to depend on what sort of things you can do. Playgrounds are amazing for fire escape ladders because you can find all kinds of stuff from the hang on, and generally the ground is like either mulch or rubber, and it's already kind of set up for in case people fall. Put it up and start climbing up it, because now you're getting used to the way that the ladder feels. That is going to be the weird part, climbing out of the window and climbing on this chain ladder. But I guarantee you it's going to be better than hanging out inside the room. One of the big things that we teach when we do fire prevention, and we're talking about getting out and staying out, and I'll ask kids, what do we go back inside for? And of course they say nothing. And I say, well, what if it's your homework? And they say, no, I'd let that burn. And then I say, what if it's your dog or your cat? And that transition point right there, we start seeing more people say, yep, I'm going in. And we have to reinforce to them, you don't go back in for your pet, for your sister, for your brother, for your mom, your dad. The chances of you getting in there as an individual and finding your scared animal and being able to get them out are going to be slim before you're overcome with something. The good thing about dogs and cats is they are super amazing at getting out of houses. Most of the time, if they have a means to get out, they will self-rescue. So just because your dog or cat didn't come out with you, if the house is on fire and there's a door open, a window open, it's very possible they may have come out. So have kind of that understanding. You may even use that as a resource to talk to your loved one, say, hey, I think it's really possible that Fluffy or whatever may have gotten out behind us. Let's wait, when we talk to the firemen, and then we'll see if we can find them. Now you're also distracting them from what's going on. It gives us a chance to go and try to see if we can locate them. Certainly if we find animals, we love animals. I got a bulldog. He's got some German Shepherds. We're advocates. We carry masks on our trucks that are oxygen masks that are designed for the snout of an animal.
Awesome.
And we will do what we can to help save those. But if it's untenable to the point that your animal has has gotten overcome or perished, that's not an environment that's going to be tenable for you. And when we go in, unfortunately, well, we're getting you before we get the animal. So just tell us, you know, hey, I've got a dog. This is what kind of dog it is, normally where it's at, and then we can look for it.
The things that opened my eyes were the fact that I can call a non-911 number at any point in time, tell them my exact address, tell them this is where I live in this building. I have X amount of children. I have X amount of dogs. I have this child that's on the spectrum. I have these needs. Please don't come up with lights. Please don't come up with sirens. That is information where everybody that gets that 911 call is going to have access to it.
Just clarify. So I know that everything that Vicki was just referring to, we had that discussion. I know that Henderson County is capable of landmark notes. If you are in Henderson County and you want to call dispatch on a non-emergency number, their number is, when you call that, a dispatcher is still going to answer, and you can just tell them, you know, I need to add a landmark note. Now, one thing I would put in there is, what you don't want to do is inundate your landmark with so much information that now it's not being read. We were just talking about, you know, the second floor apartment, you know, calling them and saying, you know, I have a concern because I'm on a second floor apartment and I don't know how capable we may be if our front exit is blocked. So I want to tell you where our bedrooms are. You know, then they can put in there that there's a, you know, a mother and or however many people, you know, a child on the spectrum, and they are in a bedroom in this corner. We see that information. We don't need to know down the hallway, up the stairs, to the left, to the right, because the only time we see that, I don't have my computer with me when we're inside. The key to information is that I know that there's someone with a special need that is in this particular location, and we're going to go through our process to address that. If you have a lockbox on your house where you keep a spare key, you can call and give that key code to dispatch. So now we don't have to break a door. We can look at that. We know what that code is. We can access a key and we can get in the house if we need to. If you are outside Henderson County, I'm not sure if anybody on here is, reach out to your local fire department or your local communication center. Look up their number in the phone book. Not the phone book, I guess now it would be Google. People are like, what's a phone book? But look that up, just contact them and say, hey, this is what I have. How can I get this information to the people who need to know? If they have that ability, they'll tell you that. We are here at the city of Hendersonville. We're actually tied in with a dispatch program called First Due. And one of the things that they have, this is going to be amazing when we get it launched, and it should be in hopefully the coming weeks. And they have a program called Community Connect. And when we launch it, information will be everywhere. We'll have it on our website. I would certainly let everyone here know. So this actually allows people in the community to say, I live at this address and these are the special things about my house, the people that live there, everything that Vicki was just naming off. You can put every bit of that in here. You can put, if you have a pool, if you have a basement, if you have 7 floors with a trap door, you can type that stuff in there. And you know, that information, I can't go on there and see an address that's not mine. So your neighbor's not going to know where your children sleep. You know, that information, you have to go on there, you have to claim an address, and once you claim that address, nobody else can claim that and access that. When we receive a call at that address, this window automatically pops up and it gives us all this information. We get information from the county tax assessor that gives us building information. So we know how big your house is, when it was built, all kinds of information that allows us to paint a picture and start a plan before we get there. If we can have a plan by the time we jump off the truck, we are minutes ahead, as opposed to rolling up and saying, yep, that's a big house and it's on fire and let's go see who's here. You know, we're behind the 8 ball when we have to do that. So when that comes out, certainly we'll get that out. I would encourage you to participate in that. We get to go in every business in the city every year. We inspect every single business here in Hendersonville every year. So we're laying hands, crawling in spaces, but we have zero regulation inside 1 and 2 family homes. In apartment buildings, we're in the stairwells, in the common areas. We're not going into people's homes. So the only opportunity we have with that is either conversing with the community like we're doing now, where people are saying, hey, I live in this house and this is the issue I've got, or when we're there on some kind of other incident. So when we're on a medical call, you may see us kind of looking around and we're not peeking at all the stuff. We're taking in that information of, you know, there's a hallway over here. You would be amazed at how often these firefighters that ride these trucks, they're like, yep, I was on a medical call at this house 18 months ago and there was a hallway that goes down the back. I'm like, I can't remember stuff I did 18 hours ago. But props to, I need the community to connect. So
and we really hope that you'll share this with friends, even of neurotypical kids, because every family needs to have a plan. So on that note, we will wrap up and we will be in touch with all of you guys, and we'll see you for part 2 pretty soon.
Thank you, guys.
looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, God bless.